Welcome everyone to this drop-in session for our open call contributions to our essays on community engaged research. My name's Carolyn Bishop. I'm Partnership and Advocacy Manager for the British Science Association, and I'm the project lead on this essay series. So I'm joined today by Cleo Heslop, who is our Head of Policy, Partnerships and Impact at the British Science Association. And Cleo's helping to manage and oversee the project on behalf of the BSA. And also here is David Chapman, who is Public Engagement Lead at UKRI, who we're partnering with to deliver the project. And I think that we've also got Tom Saunders, who's Head of Public Engagement, and Steve Scott, who might join us for the Q&A a bit later on in the session. So thank you again for giving up your time this afternoon. Just to give you a quick overview of how the session is going to work, we'll do a little bit of an intro to start with. We'll go through a little bit of the rationale, how we arrived at this point in this work, why we're doing the project, and then we'll move on to a presentation in which I'll just walk you through the details of the open call for those people that haven't managed to kind of really interrogate the detail. We'll go through it step by step, and then we'll open it up to you for Q&A. So it's very informal space. Please do feel free to ask us anything, and we'll do our best to answer the questions that you've got. In terms of mics and cameras, please, as I say, feel free to turn your camera off either during the presentation. I'll leave it off completely. And then, completely personal preference. We ask that you keep your mics muted, please, during the first bit of the meeting, just while the presentations are happening. But do feel free to post comments or questions in the chat during that time, and we'll keep an eye on it. And then during the Q&A, if you want to unmute to ask any questions, that's absolutely brilliant. Again, feel free to use your mics, but then you can post them in the chat as well. And then unless anybody kind of tells us otherwise, what we'll do is we'll take the questions that are asked in this session today, and we'll update our Padlet board in response after the meeting, so that we're capturing all the stuff that's happened, because I think that a lot of the questions that you ask us will be relevant to people more widely as well. So that's the intros from me. So I'm going to hand over to Cleo just to do a little bit of background about the BSA's involvement in the work. So Cleo, over to you.
Thanks, Carolyn. Hi, everyone. I can see we've still got a few people joining, and yeah, we'll repost any links and things so that you've got those to hand. So yeah, I'm Cleo. I'm Head of Policy, Partnerships and Impact at British Science Association. And yeah, first of all, we're really excited about this project and really pleased with the response so far, and to see so many of you here today. I thought it would be helpful to say a few words about British Science Association, BSA, why we're doing this, and then Carolyn will run through some of the detail about what we're looking for from the essays and the contributions at this stage and throughout the project. So for those of you that don't know British Science Association, we're a UK-based national charity, and we want science to be more relevant, representative and connected to society. And we have many different teams and approaches across the organisation, some focusing more on education, some more on policy, some on events and festivals. But since 2015, we've also done a lot of work supporting communities and grassroots organisations to feel more involved with science through grants and through public programmes. So a few examples: we've done small grants programs for communities to run an event or explore an issue that's of interest to them. We've run capacity building, so connecting communities together and providing training. We do a lot of work connecting communities and researchers to buddy and explore and build relationships that could lead to collaboration, or with a collaboration in place from the beginning, to lead on an engagement project or even to lead on a research project. And then we also work with communities to conduct their own research with support from researchers and research organisations. And across these kind of 9 or 10 years that we've been doing it, we've seen really how impactful and powerful this work can be, how involving communities in setting research agendas and delivering projects and shaping the research system and can lead to better research, more fulfilling research careers, fairer institutions, but also for benefits to those communities in terms of the resources they are using, the way they're approaching their work, some of the impacts that they're seeing, and kind of the broader connections that research can bring. But also beyond the programs that we've been running, we've been closely following and admiring lots of other work that's happening. We know there's loads of great practice out there. And we've seen more funding and support come into this area over the past few years. So if it feels like a kind of a good moment to consolidate some of that knowledge from across all the different organizations that are interested in this area, and bring together some perspectives on what's been learned and what future directions it could take. So we're partnering David and Tom and their colleagues at UK Research and Innovation to kind of bring that together through this essay series, hopefully leading to more awareness for community engaged research and more support, but also for people that might be new to these ideas and approaches, give a bit of an entry point and ensure that new projects aren't kind of reinventing the wheel, that they're building on the good practice that's out there. And then I think finally, we know that there are so many different approaches being taken and different directions that work could take, and each of those has implications. And so we're really keen to give space to explore all of those through an essay series, and bring together lots of different voices and experiences rather than doing a bit of desk research or a white paper or something. We really want to give space to explore all the different opportunities and potential, and some of the challenges that may come with those as well. I'll briefly say, I don't know if you've got anyone joining from outside the UK. David may say more about this, but UK Research and Innovation are main source of government research funding here in the UK, and have run some of their own programs in collaboration with us and with many other different organisations supporting community engaged research. But anyway, I'll pass over to David to say a bit more, and just finish by saying thanks again for your interest and for joining us this afternoon. And yeah, we're really excited to kick this project off.
Thanks, Cleo. And like Cleo, very happy to see so many of you here and the interest in this program. We're also, quite excited about what can be produced through this. So I think Cleo's kind of given a good background, and there's lots of similar things going on at UKRI in terms of this work and why we're supporting it. But I think just to touch on a couple of things. So as Cleo said, UKRI is the main source of public funding for research and innovation in the UK. So we give out about £8 billion a year to research and innovation across all disciplines and sectors. And we published a public engagement strategy at the end of 2022, and that talks about making sure the benefits of research and innovation are shared widely by supporting new forms of collaboration and valuing diverse forms of knowledge. So very much trying to open up the world of research and innovation to a much sort of broader concept of the system as it currently exists. And I think in this work we sort of talk about community engaged research, and that's a particular kind of way of framing it. But I think we are keen to see this as a really broad definition. So by that we don't mean a specific methodology, but kind of all of the ways that communities can work collaboratively with researchers to make a difference in the world. So I think really up for different interpretations of the way that we've described the work here. And yeah, from UKRI's perspective, we've been funding sort of community-centered, community-led, community-engaged programs for a few years, some of which are run by the BSA that Cleo's mentioned. Others which you may have heard of include the Community Research Networks program and the Community Knowledge Fund, which might be useful reading for anyone that's kind of looking for inspirational perspective on what to include in a potential essay. And yeah, also as Cleo said, we know that beyond what we've been doing ourselves, there's so much happening, and we feel like it's a really good time to take stock and to hear from people working in different ways and in different places to share what they've learned, what they experience this work to be like, and also really importantly, kind of how we can do better, how we can make this more mainstream, and how we can really take this work to the next level. So yeah, I think that's what we really want from the essays. And Cleo also mentioned that we're keen to kind of really share the outcomes with a diverse range of stakeholders, and we're planning a launch event which will be early next year to go along with the series. So even if you don't end up being a contributor, we're really keen to sort of bring people along with the program and to celebrate what comes out of it. So yeah, I'll leave it at that, and thanks again for your interest, and we look forward to seeing your submissions.
Thanks very much, David. Just to the message in the chat at the moment, we've looked at the waiting room. There's nobody in the waiting room at the minute. So I think we've let everyone in at the moment, but we will keep an eye on it and admit people as they appear in the waiting room. But yeah, welcome to everyone that's just come in. We've only just started. So thanks for joining us. Cleo, if you're happy to share the presentation, then I think what I'll do next is I will run through some of the details of the call, and hopefully a lot of this will be things that you've seen already online maybe, but hopefully it will jog people's memory or bring forward any questions that you might have. We have put the presentation in the chat as a PDF for anybody who'd like to open it and follow along with the PDF version as well. So let me start. Next slide, please, Cleo. So what we're looking for in terms of content for the essay series are the personal insights and reflections that people have gleaned from working with communities in terms of the way that communities and researchers can work together. So it's essays that go beyond just describing an individual project, really. That's what we're after, something that reflects on the bigger picture. We very much want sort of human-centered stories that share unique perspectives. So we're trying to kind of move away from a big tome of writing that's kind of quite heavy and impenetrable. So we want to be able people to be able to access this writing and to be able to pick it up and read it to prompt in their interest. So the final piece is quite short, really. It's around 800 to 1500 words, and we've asked for no more than 2000. Next slide, please, Cleo. So in terms of the target audience, so when I spoke to David, Tom and Steve at the beginning of this project, they were really keen to kind of bring people into this work that might be sort of teetering on the brink, have an interest in it, but don't quite know how to kind of get involved at the moment, or have been thinking about it for some time. So that might be community members, groups or organisations that are interested to bring research into their work, or researchers that are interested in adopting this kind of approach but haven't yet sort of engaged in it. We're also interested in speaking to brokers, intermediaries that work closely in support of communities, and then organisations that fund as well and advocate for community engaged research. So as part of this work, we really want to try and influence some changes in the way that this work is maybe funded or thought about or advocated for. Overall, the contributions should be relevant and accessible, as I've said. And the whole kind of ethos of the project is to kind of bring this work to the fore, to join it up in terms of people that might be interested in collaborating together, sharing perspectives, but also to try and, as we say, hopefully bring about some changes that need to happen in terms of the types of approaches and funding that are being taken as well. Next slide, please, Cleo. So in terms of who can contribute, we're seeking contributions from anybody who might be involved in or interested in exploring ways that the communities and researchers can work together. So that might be community members themselves, organisations or leaders that have been involved in or are connected to research. Again, intermediaries working on behalf of community groups. Researchers, again, academics that have worked with or collaborated closely with communities, or it might be funders, policymakers, people around the kind of like wider system that are currently supporting and advocating for community led research. Next slide, please, Cleo. So the sorts of work that we want to feature, we're really interested in hearing from people who were involved in work that centres the voices of people and communities that are seldom heard. So the approaches that we value are those that value lived and learned experience, that build relationships and trust, respect that community knowledge and the culture that exists within the community. They're projects that sort of might enable individual reflective practice, or invest in the long-term aims to create real change for the benefit of communities. Next slide, please. So there's a whole range of approaches that we're interested in, and it's very difficult to kind of apply terms to these, and everybody uses these terms interchangeably, but very broadly speaking, we're interested in the approaches that are shown on this slide. But if you feel that your research might not fit into that, then please do sort of ask questions, and we'll try and provide further clarification, because it is quite difficult to talk around those categories. Next slide, please. So things that we won't cover. So we're not kind of wanting to really delve into community consultation, science communication activities without specific community benefit, STEM enrichment activities, or citizen science where the benefit to community participants is limited. And it's not to say that there isn't value in that work, it's just that the scope of this essay series doesn't cover those types of research, just for clarity. We're also not interested in or don't want to include for this particular project research on communities as subjects. And we did get a question on the Padlet asking us what we meant by communities as subjects, so I will explain that here. So by subjects we mean that subjects that research on people, so passively involving individuals in studies rather than with people. So that might look like work that prioritises obtaining knowledge to further research aims, for example, without gain to the individual or the community concerned, or it might mean work that sort of leads to or reinforces a power differential between those conducting the research and those with whom the research is conducted. So again, it's very much not research that is on people, but research that is with people. Thinking about those approaches that we talked about in the previous slide. So participatory kind of asset-based approaches that are co-created with communities that derive real benefit for the community are the sorts of projects that we're interested in featuring in this work. So in terms of the themes in the essay series, we have 4 broad themes, but again, we are interested in hearing about things that possibly fall outside of these as well. We've kept them purposefully broad to try and capture a whole range of insights and perspectives. But roughly speaking, so approaches, talks, we're thinking about the frameworks for embedding truly inclusive research within communities. So that could be exploring what works and what doesn't work, and also the impact of roles and capabilities, the people, and the impact that people around the delivery of this work can have. And then in terms of impact and outcomes, so why does community engaged research matter? What sort of impact should be prioritised and why? Maybe sort of thoughts and ideas around gaps in evidence or evaluation. It might be how community engaged research drives change in a local area, and maybe sort of what community engaged research can contribute to a society that is thriving and successful and inclusive. In terms of the systems theme, so this might include information around research funding systems, the university system, the voluntary sector. So we're talking about the systems that support community engaged research, and even systems that maybe don't work so well, are those that are that don't yet exist that you think ought to exist. And then in terms of futures, possible futures, so within that theme, we're thinking about what might an ideal future for community engaged research look like. If we were to deliver it to its fullest potential, how might it impact society? And how actually might society and this work impacts research and innovation? So kind of both ends of that dynamic. Okay, thanks, Cleo. Next slide. So in terms of formats, if your expression of interest were successful and taken to the next stage, and you were to produce a piece of work for us, then the final publication that we're looking for is quite short, as I've said. It's around 800 to 1,500 words, no more than 2,000. We are open to receiving expressions of interest for contributions that aren't essays. So I've already had some brilliant emails this week with people offering poetry, for example, or visual interpretations. But we do anticipate that the final output will be predominantly in a written format. So although we're interested in receiving those, very open to receiving those expressions of interest, we can't promise that we can include them all in the final kind of output. And then, yeah, the final report that is produced will be produced in both digital and print. I thought it might be just worth kind of talking a little bit about the dissemination plans for the final output as well. So this is just a kind of snapshot. This hasn't been completely agreed yet, and I'm sure that it will go actually further and wider than this. But at a minimum, these are the channels that we'd be promoting it through, and the bubble on the side of the screen just gives you an indication of the reach of some of the channels that we have at the BSA as well. So in terms of the support that you can expect from us during the project, we are keen to support people with writing. So that might be sort of coaching, interviewing you just to kind of get the thought processes going and kind of kicking you off in the right direction, keeping you on track. We'll have oversight of all of the authors and what each of the authors are working on for the essay series. So in terms of keeping it together as one thing, then we'll be able to guide you in that as well. We are going to have a sort of introductory meeting and kick-off session for all of the authors to meet one another and talk about their different viewpoints and insights once we've made the final decision about who will be included as contributors. So we can actually be quite sort of light touch in that support if you would like to take forward the writing process on your own, or we can give you sort of some more intensive support if you'd welcome that in any way. So, and then also we will take the final contributions once they've been written. They will go out for review, so we'll help you through that review and editing process and provide lots of feedback as well to make sure, as I say, that the whole thing kind of like sits together properly in the end. And then in terms of financial support, we do recognise that there are those people that depend on financial support to make participation possible. So if it falls outside your normal job description, or if you need help with childcare costs or anything like that. So we do have a flexible budget of between £250 and £1,500, depending on your scope of your involvement and the extent of the support that you require from us. So we can discuss that with you in more detail during the shortlisting process. Okay, next slide. So hopefully you're familiar with how to express how to submit an expression of interest. And we have a Microsoft Word form online. At the moment, it's taken an average of about 30 minutes to fill that in. So it's not too onerous, hopefully. There are 4 screens that you go through, and the longest box is the 300 words for the description of your idea and some basic details about you and your background. Running parallel to that, we also have a short questionnaire in which we're capturing sort of demographics anonymously to help with the monitoring of equality, diversity and inclusion. And I'd really encourage you to go and if you haven't done so already, you have submitted to the expression of interest to do that one as well. As I say, it's completely anonymous. It doesn't influence our choice in any way. It's completely kind of disengaged from the other form, but it helps us to identify gaps in diversity so that we can address those if we need to. And then final slide. So this is about the timeline. This table sets out the timeline for the main deadlines within the project. We have taken some feedback already on the writing window that we allocated, which was quite short to start with and was over the summer holiday period. We responded to that, and we've lengthened the writing window so that it's now a 3-month period. Should you get through to be chosen as a contributor, then that will go from, as it says, Monday the 15th of July through to October, to give a really good 3-month chunk of time where we can really work with you on shaping the essay. So in terms of next steps, once we've done the shortlisting of the expressions of interest, we'll follow up with a discussion with you on a one-to-one basis. So that'll be sort of 30-minute discussion, and that's a mutual sort of discussion to explore your idea in further depth and discuss sort of how we might best support you with it, how we might work together. Yeah, if there are people that submit similar ideas, we might bring you together to collaborate as co-authors as well, and kind of hold conversations around that with you too. So the follow-up discussions will take place between the 17th and the 5th of July, and we'll work with you quite closely to try and find some availability within that time frame for you. And I think that that's brought me to the end, and it looks as though we're on time at the minute. So that's 2:30, which is quite nice. Thanks, Cleo. If you wouldn't mind stopping sharing there. Brilliant. So I think that's enough for us. What we'd really like to do now is throw open question and answers to yourselves. I can see that we've got quite a few in the chat already. If you wouldn't mind raising your hand if you've got a question that you'd like to ask verbally, but I think what I will do is I will start with the questions in the chat. So this one is from George. So given the breadth of target audience, do you have an idea of the number of references you might expect to support the writing? Okay, so Cleo, do you want to take that one?
So I can see quite a few questions around what level of kind of referencing and kind of acknowledgement of other academic sources we'd expect. I think, as Carolyn mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we're quite keen for all of the final essays to not be like informally written, but to be accessibly written. And we're aware that a lot of people may not have access to then follow-up references to academic publications if they're based in community organisations, or even we don't have it at the BSA even. So I don't think we'd expect extensive academic referencing unless if there's one or two key things that you think have really, really shaped the field or shaped your approach and are worth including, but we wouldn't expect a kind of exhaustive bibliography or anything like that really, but more like a few key links or things that have particularly inspired you, given the short word count, and also given that it's quite a broad audience that we want to read it, and we'd want it to be, yeah, as I say, engaging and accessible for quite a few different potential interest groups. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
And then I think there's another one from Sarah about how we define communities. So again, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, and I'm sure others Carol and David, if you want to chip in. Again, I think we would take quite a broad definition here. So I know that some people in academic circles, there's a kind of refer to communities within kind of communities of academics. So we don't mean that. We mean communities comprising non-academic communities, to be clear on that to begin with. So people that are brought together by a shared experience, a shared interest, a shared location, that might be brought together by language or particular issue that they're working together to solve, or the communities that are brought together because of their because of another kind of shared characteristic or demographic trait. So I've seen a definition that I think is quite helpful that I can link to, and so I'll pop that in chat and we'll make sure that that's put on the Padlet as well. But Carolyn, I don't know if you wanted to say any more on that.
I think that's that covers it. I think I would agree with that. David, would you like to add anything? Or brilliant. Okay. We've got a question from Sarah Gibson. Does it need to be prose? Could it be poetry or a conversation between two people, like an interview? So I think I've discussed this briefly with David, and I think we're open to kind of contributions that are in a different format other than an essay. I think the conversation between two people is something that we've used as a format before in some of our projects across the Ideas Fund, and that's worked really well. But we'd have to have a look at kind of the balance. What are your thoughts on that, David? Can I hand over to you?
Yeah, I think, like you say, we're open to sort of some variation in what the eventual output looks like. But I think, yeah, we are essentially looking for essays. So, you know, that's kind of the fundamental part of what brings us all together. But if you want to include some elements of more creative styles, or I think there's one suggestion of like maybe an interview between two people, that could work well. So I think just, yeah, put it into the expression of interest, and yeah, we can consider it, but I think we do need to be aware of it sort of fitting together as a cohesive package as well.
Thanks, David. How many are you looking for from, is that Sinye? I think that's a question about the overall number of essays outputs in the final project. So at the moment we're looking for between sort of 8 and 10 contributions, but again, that's flexible depending on kind of what expressions of interest we get. Let's have a look. Could essays be translated into other official UK languages? That's a really interesting question. We can definitely take that away and to take that forward and have a think about it. Thank you for asking that one. Have a look. I think we have translated previous pieces of work into Welsh, I think, haven't we, Cleo? Can essays submitted to BSA be used for other conference submissions? I would have said yes. I don't think there's anything to stop that from happening. Let's have a look. So Bethan, is there a group of authors from a range of different community groups or organisations? Do all authors need to fill out the EOI separately or just one? Oh, okay. So I think that it may be a question around people that want to co-author a piece of writing together. And I would say there's space on the form to kind of summarise the expression of interest and what you want to talk about, kind of what you want to focus on. And then there's a further box that indicates any co-authors that you might want to include on that piece of writing. So I think just the one expression of interest would be fine in that case. So a question on EDI monitoring from George. Thank you for that, George. So is EDI monitoring administered entirely separately from the submissions? If so, understandably for confidentiality, how do you monitor the demographics of who was selected? What we will do, George, is we are tracking the demographics through the online submissions that we receive through the demographic form. Obviously, that is blind, so yes, it is anonymous completely. What that will do, though, is that it will flag up sort of any gaps in particular groups or voices that might be missing from the piece, so that we can then target our call further, extend the deadline to those particular groups, and try and address those gaps as we go. Obviously, once we've selected our final contributors, before we make our final decision, we'll have complete oversight of who they are. And again, there'll be an opportunity at that point to address any gaps. And we'll take every opportunity that we can to ensure that we're including a real sort of representation of diverse groups within the final chosen contributors, if that makes sense. Hope that answers your question. Submit multiple.
Can I just add on that?
Oh yeah, sorry, quickly.
I think it's unlikely that we do a subsequent questionnaire, just because it's likely to be quite a lot smaller sample size, and I think with best intentions, I think there's a risk around anonymity there, so we might not do another formal data collection exercise once we've selected. But as Carolyn said, we definitely would be keeping in mind a diversity of different voices and experiences throughout that shortlisting and selection process as much as we can. And actually, the monitoring form is just about getting as wide a pool as possible for us to choose from at that stage.
If you feel like we've not answered the question completely, by the way, do feel free to unmute and interrupt me. I'm kind of steaming through the questions because I know that we've got quite a lot to get through. Multiple expressions of interest are fine. Sarah, that's Sarah Gibson. So yeah, we're happy to accept those. Community groups and academics, researchers to write one submission together would be brilliant. Yep, that's great, thank you. It's very difficult to say how many expressions of interest we're anticipating. At the moment we have 15, but I'm expecting that to kind of increase given the number of people that have attended this session today and the interest that's been shown in it. What we are really keen to do, we value every single one of these expressions of interest, whether or not we do sort of, have the capacity to take forward that expression of interest and include it in this subject. We're definitely interested in trying to take forward a conversation with you in some way, shape or form. So hopefully the expression of interest can lead to other things, not just the essay contribution as well. But we're having a really good think at the moment about how to kind of like group people up, match them, or kind of work with them in alternative ways if we can take forward your expression of interest. Obviously, it's going to be a very difficult decision process because we do only have a limited amount of space in the final output. Yeah, hope that answers that one. Let me have a look. So Katie, I'll get back to you on your question separately if that's okay. Who owns the copyright of the work? So David, I'm going to hand over to you and put you on the spot for this one. Would you mind just sharing your thoughts on that from UKRI's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think we are very open and flexible about this. We haven't, I don't think, nailed down quite with the British Science Association yet how we're going to approach it. But I think if there's a possibility to do it under a kind of Creative Commons license, then we're sort of keen to go down that route. But yeah, I think we need to think about this a bit more to sort of fully confirm how it's going to work. But yeah, that was our thinking so far.
Thanks, David. Thank you. Okay. Then acknowledging of co-authors in the final publication. A note about acknowledging authors. So Cleo, I don't know if you want to take that one.
Yeah, again, sort of, I think the way that we've been seeing this as like a fairly flat orgs hierarchy. So and I know that that's not always practical for academic things, but we'd sort of leave it a little bit up to you about how you want to establish authorship, and happy to just chip in and advise. But yeah, I mean, yeah, as probably coming across, we published this. We wouldn't necessarily publish this as a academically focused publication, more of a kind of yeah, report or essay collection that was a little bit broader audience. But yeah, we'll go away and have a think, and if there's any guidance we can offer that's a bit more concrete about author roles and acknowledgements, then we can put something together if that would be helpful. But broadly, we'd probably leave that up to the contributors and writers. Yeah, we can make it referenceable, and I'm sure we can probably get a DLR link if that would be useful to people as well.
Thanks, Cleo. I think that the next question is from Leslie Wood, and in relation to contributors that are outside the UK. Yeah, this has been asked already. Actually, there is a question on the Padlet about it, and I think that we're really interested to hear sort of perspectives from outside the UK, international perspectives. But there will be a prioritisation of UK-based projects within the final output. Yeah, we will be limited on the number of contributions that we can devote to international contributors. But that being said, there may be ways of sort of pairing people up or working together. We're really interested in international perspectives as a way to kind of inform approaches within the UK. Yeah, I would still encourage you to submit an expression of interest. But yeah, it will be weighted towards UK-based projects. Would you agree, David? Is that fair to say? Yeah, thank you for that. Let's have a look. Sarah, so the funding that's available, is it okay to negotiate with you how we pay co-authors, like a sort of PPI payment for unwage people? Yeah, we can talk about all of that in the shortlisting stage, should you be successful in getting through. Let's have a look. So this is from Hannah. So we work on a programme with several projects involved in community engaged research. Done some synthesis of how people have found this way of working. Understanding from this webinar that you'd be interested more in hearing personal experience of how this has worked rather than overall findings. Yeah, it's a difficult one really, because we are kind of, although we're interested in those personal insights and that kind of human angle, we are interested in research that's looked across several different projects as well.
I think, sorry, Carolyn, I was going to say a little bit more about that one, if that's all right. Just, yeah, I think, yeah, a kind of synthesis across multiple projects, I think would actually be really useful. And we don't necessarily always just want to hear maybe like the perspective of the people involved, but if there's somebody who's got sight across those multiple programs and can kind of draw on that collective experience and sort of put forward like a vision or a sort of, you know, through all this learning that we've done, you know, this is how it feels to us and here's where we'd like to see things go next, could be like a really nice way of sort of framing it. So I think we'd welcome that sort of synthesis. Yeah.
Thanks, David. Hannah, did you want to come back and comment on that at all, or are you happy?
No, that's really useful. Thank you. Sorry, I was trying to put my thumbs up rather than my hand up.
Oh, no worries. Okay, thank you. Okay, so light-hearted sections, added humour. I say, why not? Yes, please. Send those in. That'd be interesting. I had another inquiry earlier this week asking if we would like to kind of receive a sort of sci-fi approach to the future of community-led insert, which I said yes to. So yeah, I think we're open to all sorts of interpretations at the moment. I'm very interested in receiving those. If you have a high level of interest in other opportunities, could there be potential for an unheard voices in research type venture? Very interesting. Thanks for putting that forward. How diverse are the people in charge involved in this programme? Yep. Is it representative of those you're seeking to bring into the process? So Cleo, would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and there's some of this is included on the Padlet as well, which we can share a link to. So ourselves and our colleagues have already reached out to some of our networks that include community organisations and people with very close links to them to kind of shape the open call and the support that we're able to offer, and also involving those people in the shortlisting process and kind of throughout the project. So yeah, in terms we've been really mindful of this as we've been working together, and we've brought in a bit of external support as well from people that work really closely with communities and that can going to support the writing process as well. So there are a few different things that we're doing just to, you know, make sure that as well as the staff team that are working on this, we've got community perspectives included, and we've got different experiences feeding in right from the beginning. So yeah, so we're doing our best, and you know, going to continue to keep an eye on that as the project progresses. But as I say, we've put a few things already on the Padlet, and if there's any specific things that you'd like to come and talk to us about on that front, then yeah, please get in touch.
Thanks, Cleo. Mary, your next question, small group of parents and carers of disabled children. We prefer to submit an EOI with 3 communities in mind. Absolutely, yeah, that's absolutely fine. Following on from the copyright question, can the authors publish the essay elsewhere, i.e. in our own organisations, publications and reports? David?
Yeah, I think we'd be open to that. We've discussed this, so I suppose, yeah, once we've published it, then we'd be very happy for it to be kind of shared as a standalone piece elsewhere, with, I think, yeah, some attribution back to the broader programme and the sort of collection it's published as part of. But I think, yeah, we'd be quite open to that.
Sarah, would you be interested in research from a particular, for example, mental health survivor research perspective? Our researchers would, yes, definitely. It's that one. What kinds of community perspectives are represented in your decision-making process? So Sarah, I hope Cleo's kind of answered that with the question about the kinds of community perspectives that are represented in the decision-making process. But if we haven't, then please do let us know. So David said community perspectives were represented, but not which ones. Is that in response to the shortlisting process in particular, Sarah? Sorry. Okay. So at the moment, we're seeking to involve sort of people across different perspectives and disciplines within the shortlisting process. We haven't completely finalised the shortlisting team at the moment, but we can make that clear and transparent once we have. So thank you very much, Paul. So yeah, I think we can definitely sort of share more information about that once that's completely decided. But
I can just add to that and say, yeah, at the moment we've got a shortlist for the shortlisting group, but it's split roughly in equal thirds. So the project management team being kind of 1/3 of it, 1/3 of it being colleagues or collaborators who work very closely with communities, and then another 1/3 of it being people that represent the voices of communities that have been involved in projects that we've been working on. Given that it's quite a tight timeline, we're mostly sticking with the networks that that ourselves and our collaborators have access to. But again, we're going to try and make that as transparent as possible. I hope that's a bit clearer.
Thanks, Cleo, and thank you, everyone. So we really have kind of gone through the questions at breakneck speed there. So apologies if we didn't get to answer them in as much depth as perhaps you'd hoped. And please do feel free to sort of follow up with us separately. I will pop my contact details in the chat for people as well. Let's see, Guy has raised a hand. So Guy, would you like to?
I'm going to put my camera on. So is it possible for two people who are potentially interested to work together and make one contribution as one?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we would welcome that. Okay, great stuff. Are there any further questions from anybody? David, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wondered whether it was worth just saying a bit about Katie's question that we sort of said to get back to her, because it might be relevant for other people as well, sort of on the call or who catch up. But I think, so just to go back to it, this was about working in an arts charity and an Arts Council England portfolio organisation with artists, farmers, philosophers, researchers, to explore where they feel and about themselves and their place. And I think, yeah, it sounds like a really interesting approach and definitely the kind of practice that we're looking at featuring. But I think we're also really keen to make sure there's that strong link to the research and innovation system. So how is that sort of impacting the research that gets done, through that practice, as well as just being something that, those individual communities benefit from? How is that sort of reflecting back into the system and the way researchers are sort of practicing or the way they might practice in the future? So I think as long as it's got that element in there, then yeah, it sounds great.
Thanks, David, for going back to that one. And thanks, Katie, for asking that question. And I think, Guy?
Sorry, I just wanted to follow up on what I said before, which was if two people created a joint application, would they get double the allocation, i.e. 3,000 words?
No, the word limit would stay the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So in terms of next steps, if I can be of help at all, please do let me know. I will put my email address in the chat. And thank you again for attending. We will capture to the best of our ability the questions that have been asked during the session and post them onto the Padlet to ensure that they are shared more widely, so that everybody can benefit from that. If for any reason you don't want your question to be included, please do let me know, either by posting the chat or by contacting me separately, and we can make sure that it's left out. But thank you very much for attending today, and I hope it has been useful to you all. Cleo, David, would you like to share some closing words?
Just to say, yeah, thanks everyone for your time today and for your interest. Yeah, just really looking forward to seeing what comes in.
Yeah, likewise. And as Carolyn said, sorry we didn't have time to go into loads and loads of detail, but hopefully this is enough to get you started. And yeah, we're super pleased that so many of you were able to come along.
Thank you again for attending, and we really look forward to receiving an expression of interest from you. I'll just pop my email address there. We will stay on for a couple of minutes for anyone that wants to ask a question that doesn't feel like it's been answered. But other than that, that's the end. Thank you very much for attending.